Chapter 4. 7 years old. As I sat in the grand halls of the Emerald Palace, sipping warm milk and nibbling on a slice of cake, I mulled over a rather interesting idea. Across from me, Lucas lounged lazily in his chair, swirling his cup as if he were indulging in the finest tea rather than plain milk. His sharp red eyes flickered with amusement as he watched me in silence, waiting for whatever scheme I was concocting this time. "I think it's time I planted my own spies in the Alpheus household," I finally said, setting my cup down. "With Ezekiel gone to boarding school, I need someone else to keep an eye on the Duke and Jeanette." Lucas raised an eyebrow, clearly intrigued. "Why are you so honed in on the Duke's family, Princess?" He took a bite of his cake, chewing slowly. "You're always watching them like a hawk. It's almost obsessive." I met his gaze, unfazed. "What will you do when someone is planning to overthrow you? Will you just sit back and watch?" I tapped my fork against my plate. "Jeanette is the Duke's golden goose. He has a plan for her, and whatever it is, it involves taking something from me. I won't let that happen." Lucas smirked, a dangerous glint in his eyes. "Now, that's interesting." He leaned forward, resting his chin on his hand. "How about we stop guessing and take a little peek for ourselves?" Before I could react, the air around us warped, and suddenly, the elegant walls of the Emerald Palace disappeared. I barely had time to process what was happening before we reappeared in a dimly lit corridor lined with heavy red curtains and expensive chandeliers. The Alpheus estate. I turned to glare at Lucas. "Did you just teleport us here without asking me?" Lucas chuckled, completely unbothered. "You were going to send spies anyway. I'm just cutting out the middleman." He tilted his head. "Besides, this is way more fun, don't you think?" I exhaled sharply, already regretting letting him get involved. But since we were here, I might as well make use of it. Carefully, I crept forward, peering into a nearby sitting room where a young girl sat playing with a porcelain doll. Jeanette. She looked exactly as rumors described, soft brown hair styled neatly with a ribbon, her delicate features brightened by a cheerful smile. The only thing that stood out were her striking blue crystal eyes, the undeniable proof of royal lineage. Yet, the moment Lucas laid eyes on her, his amused expression twisted into something unreadable. "TCH," he scoffed, his usual teasing tone nowhere to be found. His red eyes glowed faintly in the dim light. I frowned, turning to him. "What?" Lucas crossed his arms, staring at Jeanette with an expression I'd never seen before, almost like disgust. "She's a chimera." I blinked. "What?" "A product of black magic experimentation," he clarified, voice laced with distaste. "That girl isn't normal. She's been tampered with, probably before she was even born." I felt my stomach drop. "Black magic?" My voice was barely above a whisper. That kind of sorcery had been banned in the Empire for centuries. Anyone caught practicing it was executed without question. Lucas nodded, his gaze never leaving Jeanette. "It's subtle, but I can see it. Black magic lingers in her aura, like a stain that can't be washed away." His lips curled into a smirk, though there was something darker beneath it. "You should stay away from her, Princess. Whatever she is, she's unnatural." I stared at Jeanette, a strange mix of emotions stirring inside me. If what Lucas said was true, then the Duke had been hiding something far bigger than just a secret daughter. What exactly had he done? And more importantly, why? I clenched my fists. Back in the Emerald Palace, I wasted no time impressing Lucas for more information about black magic. If what he said about Jeanette was true, I needed to understand exactly what I was dealing with. Lounging on my velvet sofa, Lucas took his time answering, swirling his cup of milk like he was some kind of noble enjoying fine wine. "Unlike regular magic, black magic requires a price," he finally said. "Sometimes, that price is small, like energy. Other times, it's something much bigger, like a sacrifice." I frowned. "A sacrifice?" Lucas smirked. life, memories, emotions, black magic can take whatever it wants in exchange for power. That's why it's been banned for so long. It's dangerous, unpredictable, and usually ends in disaster. I sat back, letting his words sink in. If Jeanette really had black magic, did that mean she had made some kind of deal? No, she was just a child. Wait, just because Jeanette has black magic doesn't mean she uses it, right? I asked. Maybe it's just, there. Lucas gave me an unimpressed look. Black magic is really influential. It can mess with people's minds and even control them. He leaned in slightly, his crimson eyes gleaming. Some people don't even need to be aware that they have magic in order to use it. A chill ran down my spine. You mean she could be using black magic without even noticing? Lucas nodded. Exactly. That was a problem. A big problem. If Jeanette's magic was acting on its own, who knew what kind of effects it could have? Was that why the Duke was keeping her hidden? Or worse, was he the one who had given her black magic in the first place? I bit my lip, thinking hard. I needed a way to keep an eye on her. Sending more spies wouldn't be enough. If black magic could manipulate minds, how could I trust the information I got? As if reading my thoughts, Lucas smirked. If you really want to keep an eye on things, how about enchanting some objects in the mansion? My eyes widened. You can do that? Of course, I can. He sounded almost offended that I doubted him. I'll set up enchantments on things around the estate, mirrors, jewelry, whatever works. With my magic, they'll transmit everything that happens straight to you. It was perfect. With Lucas's help, I wouldn't need spies, I could see everything with my own eyes. From that day forward, Jeanette's every move was laid bare before me through a magic mirror hidden in my chambers. And what I saw only deepened my suspicions. 7 years later. 14 years old. The empire buzzed with excitement as the news spread. Soon, Princess Athanasia de Algerobelia would be making her official debut into society. It was a rare and prestigious event, as the palace did not often host debutante balls. Nobles across the empire scrambled for invitations, eager to witness the princess's grand entrance into high society. Meanwhile, in the Alpheus mansion, Jeanette could hardly contain her anticipation. Seated in her finely decorated room, she clutched the edges of a gilded invitation, her blue crystal eyes glowing with hope. So, it's really happening, she asked eagerly, looking up at the Duke, who stood by the fireplace, sipping his wine. Duke Alpheus, ever the picture of composure, offered a small smile. Yes, my dear. The Emperor himself is hosting the event for the princess. Jeanette's heart pounded. This was her chance. Her whole life, she had waited for the moment she could stand in the palace, not as an outsider, but as a rightful daughter of the Emperor. The Duke had always promised, always reassured her, that if she proved herself, she would earn a place beside her father. And I'll be introduced to him then, she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The Duke set down his glass, observing her carefully. If you continue to perform well, there is no reason why I should not present you to His Majesty during the event. Jeanette's fingers tightened around the invitation. She had studied tirelessly for this. Endured the strictest tutors, swallowed the constant comparisons to her half-sister, and endured the disappointment in the eyes of the Duke and those around her. But none of that would matter once she stood before the Emperor. I won't disappoint you, uncle, she said, determination burning in her gaze. The Duke chuckled, placing a hand on her head in an almost fatherly gesture. See that you don't, Jeanette. This is a crucial moment, for both of us. Jeanette nodded. This wasn't just her debut. It was her chance to finally claim her place. Her chance to become a true princess of Obelia. The afternoon sun cast a golden glow over the lush rose garden of the Emerald Palace, where delicate pink petals swayed gently in the breeze. The scent of blooming roses mingled with the aroma of freshly brewed tea, and the soft clinking of porcelain filled the tranquil air. Claude sat with effortless grace at the ornate table, draped in a white Roman-style robe that left his chest bare, an image of regal indifference. Across from him, Athanasia, dressed in an elegant pale blue gown adorned with intricate lace, tilted her head, resting her chin in her palm as she sighed dramatically for what felt like the 100th time that afternoon. A wide-brimmed hat shielded her delicate platinum blonde hair from the sun, but it did little to hide the pout on her lips. Claude, who had been idly swirling his tea, finally spoke. "What is bothering you?" Athanasia let out another sigh. "Lucas still hasn't returned yet. He promised to get me a dragon's egg for my birthday this year." Claude raised a brow, setting his cup down with a quiet clink. "A dragon's egg?" "MMHM," she hummed, swirling the spoon in her teacup absent-mindedly. "But he's been gone for over a year now, off doing who knows what. He's probably slacking off." Claude exhaled sharply. "Humph. That brat is always causing trouble. Right?" Athanasia huffed, though there was a hint of fondness in her voice. A brief silence fell between them as the breeze rustled through the garden. Then, as if the thought had just occurred to him, Claude asked, "Speaking of birthdays, is there anything you want besides the dragon egg?" Athanasia blinked, surprised. Nothing in particular." "Oh. Your debutante ball is coming up. Have you chosen an escort?" Claude's question made Athanasia pause, her spoon stopping mid-stir as memories of her past life surfaced. Back then, she had no escort, no one had stepped forward, and she had faced the debut alone. This time, she wanted it to be different. Actually, Daddy, I've been meaning to talk to you about that," she began hesitantly, setting her cup down. "Would you mind being my escort and my first dance?" Claude's gaze flickered with slight surprise, but he remained silent as she quickly added, "It's all right if you don't want to. I'll just ask Felix, and if Lucas ever makes it back, I'll—" "Absolutely not," Claude interrupted, his face darkening at the mention of her alternatives. "Felix? Lucas? Those are your top candidates?" Athanasia giggled at his expression, but nodded. "Well, who else would I ask?" Claude let out an irritated sigh, before leaning back in his chair. "I can do it." Athanasia's eyes widened. "Really? But you hate these types of events," she said, skeptical. "It's just one dance." "I don't mind entering with you," he replied smoothly. Before he could say anything else, Athanasia practically leaped from her chair and landed on his lap, wrapping her arms around him. "Daddy," she beamed, squeezing him tight. "You really mean it? No oopsies take back? You promise?" Claude tensed for a moment before exhaling, resting a hand on her back. "I promise." Athanasia grinned, burying her face in his shoulder. The idea of her debut ball no longer seemed as stressful, it would be perfect with her father by her side. The Emerald Palace shimmered with golden candlelight, the scent of fresh roses and fine pastries filling the grand ballroom. Laughter and cheerful music echoed through the halls as noble ladies, servants, and even the princess's tutors gathered to celebrate Athanasia's 14th birthday. The long banquet table was lined with delicious treats, colorful macarons, fluffy cream cakes, fruit tarts, and a stunning three-tiered birthday cake decorated with delicate sugar flowers. Despite the warmth of the gathering, Athanasia couldn't fully enjoy it. She knew she should be grateful, everyone had worked so hard to make this evening special for her. Yet, deep down, she couldn't ignore the absence of two very important people. Lucas was still away, and her father, well, he had never celebrated her birthday. Not once. Still, she smiled as she lifted her teacup, listening as Lillian, Hannah, and CES tried to entertain her with amusing gossip from the palace. And then Sir Felix nearly dropped the Emperor's sword on his own foot during training this morning. CES exclaimed, laughing. Felix, who had been casually sipping his wine, choked and shot the young maid a glare. "I did not nearly drop it. I was adjusting my grip." "That's not what the knights said," Lillian teased, covering her mouth to stifle a laugh. Athanasia chuckled, shaking her head. "Felix, I thought you were supposed to be the perfect knight?" Felix sighed dramatically. "Even the best have their off days, princess." "You mean off years," Hannah added with a smirk. The table erupted into laughter, and for a moment, Athanasia felt lighter. She appreciated how hard they were all trying to cheer her up. Then, as if reading her thoughts, Eloise, the ever-dignified head tutor, offered a reassuring smile. Your Highness, His Majesty may not be here today, but remember, he has already agreed to escort you to your debut ball. Athanasia stirred her tea absent-mindedly. I know, she murmured, trying to keep her tone indifferent. It's a grand honor, Lillian added. His Majesty hasn't danced at a ball in years. Felix crossed his arms. More like ever. I've never seen him dance, and I've been by his side since before you were born, Princess. Do you think he'll step on my feet? Athanasia mused, trying to inject some humor into her voice. CES grinned. If he does, you'll have the perfect excuse to step on his first. That made her laugh, and the tension in her chest eased a little. As the evening continued, the party carried on with music, gifts, and lively conversation. The tutors gave her books on politics and magic, while her ladies-in-waiting gifted her fine jewelry and perfumes. Felix even presented her with an exquisitely crafted dagger, which earned a few shocked gasps from the noble ladies. For self-defense, he said, winking. Not that you'll need it with the Emperor as your escort. Athanasia smiled, twirling the dagger in her hand. It's perfect. Thank you, Felix. Even though part of her still longed for a certain black-haired magician's teasing remarks or for her father's rare presence, she knew she wasn't alone. And perhaps, this year, things would start to change. As the grand celebration carried on, the guests naturally split into smaller groups, each engaged in their own conversations. Among them, Lillian, Hannah, and CES gathered near one of the lavishly decorated tables, their excitement barely contained. Sir Felix, ever the vigilant knight, stood beside them, arms crossed as he listened in amusement. All those years of preparation, all the rumors, and now, finally, Her Highness will be revealed to high society, Lillian said, taking a sip of her wine. I almost can't believe it's happening. Hannah nodded enthusiastically. You know, some of the nobles have all sorts of wild theories about the princess. They've never seen her outside the Emerald and Garnet palaces, so they assume the worst. She rolled her eyes. Some even think she's sickly, or that she's nothing like His Majesty. CES smirked. Oh, they're in for a surprise. Felix let out a short chuckle. More like a shock. They think she's just some fragile noble girl, but they have no idea what's coming. She's not just some meek princess, she's his daughter. The ladies nodded in agreement. There was no denying that Athanasia carried the same regal aura as her father, no matter how much she tried to downplay it. I'm most looking forward to their reaction when they realize how intelligent she is, Lillian added with a proud smile. All these years, they've doubted her, but once she speaks, once they see how well she carries herself, there won't be a single noble who can question her right to the throne. Hannah sighed dreamily. And she'll finally get to interact with nobles her own age. CES scoffed. Are there even any worth her time? Hannah laughed. Well, she can't just talk to us and Sir Felix forever. Why not? Felix smirked. We're excellent company. Lillian rolled her eyes. Don't flatter yourself, Sir Felix. Then, her tone softened as she glanced toward Athanasia, who was still seated at the main table, listening to her guests with a polite but distant expression. Still, I do hope she finds good company among the noble youth. Lucas is the only one her age, and well. CES snorted. Lucas is Lucas. Hannah giggled. That's one way to put it. Felix sighed. Speaking of which, where is that brat? The princess has been waiting for him all night. Off doing whatever it is magicians do, Lillian replied. But he'd better hurry back. He wouldn't want to miss her debut, would he? Their eyes turned back to the princess, who sat with poise and grace, a serene mask hiding her inner thoughts. No matter what rumors the nobles whispered, no matter what doubts they had, soon, they would all see the truth. Athanasia de Alger Obelia was not just some hidden, forgotten princess. She was the imperial princess. And soon, the entire empire would know it. Inside the grand Alpheus mansion, nestled in one of the most beautifully decorated rooms, Jeanette sat on the plush pink chaise near her vanity, eyes gleaming with anticipation. Her room was adorned in soft shades of pink and white, with delicate gold trimmings lining the walls and furniture. White lace curtains fluttered slightly from the night breeze seeping through the slightly open window, and a crystal chandelier cast a warm glow over the room, making it feel like something out of a fairy tale. But Jeanette wasn't thinking about her room, no, her thoughts were entirely consumed by what was to come. Her gaze shifted to the elegant dress draped over the mannequin in the center of her room. A masterpiece of pastel pink, blue, and white, the gown was adorned with delicate pearls and lace, making it look like it belonged to a true princess. A princess. That's what she was. Not just a noble lady in the Duke's household, not just someone waiting in the shadows. She was Emperor Claude de Obelia's daughter. She smiled to herself, gently brushing her fingers over the soft fabric. Finally, she whispered, her voice trembling with excitement. Finally, I'll be where I belong. For years, she had waited for this moment. The day she could leave the Alpheus mansion and step into the palace as a real member of the imperial family. The day her father would recognize her, acknowledge her, love her. She had spent so much of her life hearing about Athanasia. Athanasia is so smart. Athanasia is so graceful. Athanasia this, Athanasia that. It had driven her mad. She had never even met her so-called sister, yet she had always been forced to live in her shadow. Jeanette clenched her hands into fists, her nails digging into the soft fabric of her nightgown. Everything will be different after tomorrow, she told herself, forcing down the bitterness creeping into her voice. The Duke had always promised her that once she was good enough, once she was worthy, she would be introduced to her father. And what better time than during the princess's debutante ball? With all the nobility present, there would be no choice but to acknowledge her. She turned back to her vanity, where a small portrait of her mother, Penelope, rested against the mirror. Jeanette traced the frame with a delicate finger. "Mother, I'll make you proud," she murmured. "I'll finally take my rightful place." With that thought in mind, she rose from her seat and climbed into her grand canopy bed, drawing the soft pink blankets over herself. Tomorrow would be the most important day of her life. Tomorrow, she would no longer just be Jeanette Marguerite. She would be Princess Jeanette de Obelia. Athanasia sat at her grand vanity, her fingers idly tapping against the polished white marble surface. The glow of the magic mirror reflected in her crystal blue eyes, casting an eerie light over her face. On the other side of the enchanted glass, Jeanette's excited expression filled the screen as she admired the pastel pink, blue, and white gown that she would wear to Athanasia's debut ball. The princess let out a slow breath, her gaze impassive as she watched Jeanette murmur to herself, touching the frame of a small portrait, her mother's portrait. Penelope Judith. Athanasia leaned back slightly in her chair, letting her eyes wander away from the mirror for a moment. Her own bedroom was nothing short of a royal masterpiece, dwarfing Jeanette's in sheer size and luxury. The walls were painted a soft pastel green, adorned with intricate white crown moldings. Embedded in the wall trims were glimmering emeralds that caught the light of the massive crystal chandelier hanging above, casting a faint green glow across the room. Her bed, her throne of comfort, was massive, draped in sheer white and gold embroidered canopies, its plush pillows and silk sheets fit for a crown princess. A grand set of doors led to her private balcony, overlooking the palace gardens, and across the room, a sitting area with elegant sofas and a marble fireplace gave the space a regal warmth. And yet, despite all the luxury, Athanasia felt nothing. No excitement. No anticipation. Just a quiet, lingering exhaustion. She turned her attention back to the mirror just in time to see Jeanette crawling into bed, her expression filled with eager hope. A hope that Athanasia did not share. She exhaled slowly, her long lashes lowering as she whispered to herself, "What a foolish dream." With that, she waved a hand, and the magic mirror dimmed, fading back into an ordinary vanity mirror. Jeanette's image disappeared. Athanasia rose from her seat and walked towards her grand bed, letting the soft silk of her nightgown brush against the cold marble floors. She climbed in without a second thought, pulling the covers over herself, her mind already wandering elsewhere. She didn't care that Jeanette was excited. She didn't care what the Duke had planned. She didn't care about what was coming tomorrow. She closed her eyes, letting the soft hum of the palace lull her to sleep. No matter what happened at the debut, she was still the princess. And Jeanette was nothing more than a girl chasing a dream that wasn't hers to have. Like, comment and subscribe to be notified for updates in the series.